everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Beyond Sundays podcast. We're so excited that you're joining us, whether you're watching or listening. We love having you on the other side of this recording. So today, I'm joined once again by my co-host, Mason. What's up?
What's up, everybody? Excited for another episode of Called for a Purpose.
Yep.
Today, we have the best possible guest we could absolutely have.
That is not true, but I am excited to be here.
He's my boss, so I have to say
true.
that. It's in my job description. But Geoffrey Turner, our upcoming and new lead
pastor in waiting. I don't know what my title is these days.
What is it? It's made up.
You're here.
I am here.
You're not leaving.
I am not going anywhere for a long time.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to dive in today. This is going to be a real simple episode where we asked some questions of our listeners, and they sent some in of like questions that they had about calling and purpose. And so we're just going to sit here and sift through these questions, and each of us probably are going to have a chance and an opportunity to answer based out of our own experience or based out of...
we've all done this different.
Yeah, for sure.
I've, before I was in vocational ministry, I was in leadership at a grocery store, running a seafood market, which is really weird Geoffrey trivia that maybe people didn't know. I did that, and then I did that for a long time, and then I got to be leading in a small group, and then came here and was a associate youth pastor, and then have done just about every job except kids since then. And you're just now starting your leadership journey and what it looks like to be a leader and leading serve teams in the worship world, but then also getting to lead on our staff. And so it'll be fun. So we all have different unique perspectives to bring to this topic.
Yeah. I think that's going to be good. I'm excited too. Geoffrey used to work in the seafood department and asked me about the time he left his clothes in the trunk of my car. How did that go?
I mean, it was never this. It was literally never the same.
He ruined my vehicle.
Oh, no. And this is before we were married, and she still married me. So,
yeah,
Joke's on
I guess
you.
I liked you enough. I guess I liked you enough.
I did really ruin that car, though. It was never the same.
Yeah,
the jelly bean.
The jelly bean.
May she
It's
rest
gone.
in peace.
All right, so we're diving in. How about that? Let's go.
I'm in a Turner sandwich.
Mason.
Is what Sarah told me. So I'm excited.
It was unintentional, but it's time. Let's go. First question, and anyone just pop in. Okay, we're just going to ask these questions to one another. Do you think, this is coming straight from one of our listeners, do you think our passions can be God given us like a direction in where we're called to minister? Do you think our passions can be God giving us direction in where we're called to minister?
Yes.
1,000%.
Can y'all expound?
I guess we should expound on that. It would be really weird if they weren't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Scripture tells us that we were knit in our mother's womb. And so, like, the things that make us us are all really unique characteristics of us. We're made in the image of God. Therefore, the parts that make us us are parts of his character. So, like, there are things in each of us. They're flawed because we are flawed people, and we're still, until this side of heaven, we will still be the same flawed people trying to become more like Jesus. But there are parts of us that are uniquely designed to make us us. So, like, in what I am called to do in this season of my life, if I loathed public speaking, that would be a really weird thing that then I would be called to do this. And so same with like kids ministry. There's some people, like I've joke all the time, I've done every job at this church except kids ministry.
It's the second time you said that in this
I know.
podcast.
I do. It's the truth. I've never done it. I've worked in facilities. I was an intern. I did it all, but never kids ministry. It was never my heart, never something that I felt like I wanted to do. And the people that are called to do it super well. And that's their passion. They love to do it, and they love to hold a crying baby. And I love that you love to do that. I didn't like to hold my own babies when they were crying. I'd give them to Sarah, but like
that's true.
They're just different things about us, the way we were made and the way we were designed that God did on purpose. Now, does that mean that there are not times that we need to be stretched? No.
Yeah.
When I started working at Beltway, I hated to speak in public. I mean, it was from some trauma that I experienced as a middle schooler, but I hated speaking in public. And so there was a stretch, and there was a good season that I didn't want to do it, but felt like I was supposed to. And then as I walked in my calling more, then that part of me kind of came alive. And now I love to do it. So sometimes too much. Often it's like, hey, all right, it's 38 minutes. Let's go. We got to be done.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to disconnect our passions and what God is speaking to us. And we think that it's two separate things. And the reality is, as a worship pastor, I obviously have a love for music and
Yeah.
singing and playing instruments and leading serve teams in that area. But it would be crazy to think that desire and that passion was not from God. And I think that we sometimes think that we have to hear the voice of the Lord Almighty and saying, you are supposed to do this, or you are supposed to lead in this area. And really, it's just like, since I was like super young, which Geoffrey's going to say you are super young, so that makes no sense. But when I was a little boy, like I've always loved music, and I've always had this passion for music, even if I wasn't good at it. But that was just something that I've always had. And I believe like that was the Lord from a young age speaking that into me and saying, hey, this is what I have for you. I have this this purpose for you in a vocational ministry way. And so I think, if you're at home and you have this passion and it's something that you can do to glorify the Lord, I would guess, and this is for you to discern and bring to the Lord, but that's probably from Him.
Yeah.
Especially if it's something that you can use to glorify Him, and then we just step into our primary call of advancing the gospel through whatever that passion is.
I want to speak to this too, because I as a child loved creating flower arrangements. I actually would take all the flower arrangements in my grandmother's
Did you
house.
do that too, Mason?
Yep. I
Okay,
did that.
I'm going to go somewhere with this story, but my grandmother kept my sisters and I every day after school and all during the summer, and she had all these fake plants in her house, and I loved taking apart all the arrangements and putting them all back together and playing flower shop. That's what I love to play. So fast forward, I love to create. That's part of my calling. I love to co-create with the Lord because He is creator. That's one of the ways I image Him on earth, is creating. Lots of different things, but one of the ways I love creating is through flowers. And so the Lord gave me an opportunity. I really believe Jeff and I discerned that it was time to possibly at one time in my life pursue flowers and pursue an entrepreneurial business. So I opened my own company, did weddings for a while at least. But in that season, I knew the Lord called me to it. I knew I was called to love people and to serve them in the way that God had given me the ability to do so. But at the end of that season, I remember telling you at a certain point, because I felt like a square peg in a round hole. And I ended up discerning with the Lord that not all passions are meant to be your full-time calling career type thing. But in God's grace and kindness, He was like, hey, girl, let's go try this. And He gave me an opportunity to test it out.
Do you think God thinks that way?
I mean, he said, oh my gosh, you hear God's voice so different than I do. Hey, girl.
Okay. Well,
That was great. I'm glad that happened.
anyways, what I'm trying to say is He was so kind to let me try, to let me go out there and risk it and put myself out there and try these passions of mine that had been in me since I was a kid, a child. And it was fun. It was hard work and it took a lot of discipline, but it was such a good experience. And I was able to discern, that's not what I'm meant to do forever. I still love flowers. It's still a passion of mine, but it's not what I want to do with my whole life. And that's just God's kindness, continuing to give us direction. And He allowed me to do something I was interested in.
Yeah.
To give me space to process in my own heart something that He deposited there. Yeah. And what was that going to look like in the totality of my life? How big of a role was that passion going to play? That was up to Him and I to discern together.
Yeah. It's good.
It's good. Well, question number 2 says, how do we know if we're hearing from God or if we're just following our own desires or the expectations of others?
Adding in the expectations of others is a good part of that. This is a big one to actually hit on the importance of community. Is like as you wrestle through your own desires that we all have, when we have people alongside of us who are running in the same direction. So the story I always love to tell is the Moses, Aaron, and Hur story, where Moses is leading the people of God, Joshua is leading the army. Moses sends Joshua to lead the people out into battle, and Moses stands up there with his Aaron and Hur, and they are the guys that he is doing life with, the guys who are, when he gets weak in that moment, they help him be strong. Through a whole sequence of events, they end up overcoming and winning the battle that they're in, but he's doing life with these other guys and they're going in the same direction. And so for me, as I take steps into doing whatever I'm supposed to do, I have those people around me who, if they see me doing something that feels like I'm just chasing something that's just my own passions and not something I'm supposed to be a part of, they're going to be there to go, hey, you need to, like, come on, get back in the road that you're supposed to, because we're all running in the same direction. So, I mean, of course, it's listening to the Holy Spirit, learning to discern God's voice. Those are always things that have to be a practice from the time you say yes to Jesus until the time we take our last breath. We are trying to get better at hearing his voice. But we have to be around people who are running the same direction, who can help us in those times that we might be veering off. So, like, I remember when I first started wrestling through going into vocational ministry, I had no desire to do it. I grew up in a pastor's home. My dad was a great pastor dad. He did it well. But I also saw the weight of it. And I saw the times that he was leaving our house in the evening because somebody had lost a loved one. I knew the weekends and the camps and all the things that it took to be a pastor and how it looked like to be a pastor's kid. And so I had no desire to do it. So then I had one of my Aaron and hers, who's been my best friend since we were, 12 years old, Joel. And we were talking, and we were in college, and we're roommates at the time, and I'm saying, well, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do this. And I mean, he's just sitting there like looking at me just like, dude, you know what you're supposed to do. So, and it was that moment that helped you kind of me go, all right, you're right. I'm going to do some more hard work of trying to hear the Lord's voice. But Joel was constantly just kind of prodding me into that, hey, we're all running after the same thing. We want to chase after Jesus.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling like you're not hearing this right now. And so having people around you to supplement us hearing God's voice, hearing his voice is tantamount. It is the most important thing. But then having people around you running the same way, in the same direction, with the same purpose and plans and passions helps us to know that it's not just us. It's not just my desire. It is also my desire, which should be a part of it, mixed with the voice of the Lord, but also the community around me. So that's at least how I've walked it out.
And that's good, because those people, at the times that they can help you get back on course, they're also there to affirm you when you are doing that well.
Yeah.
And so that's very important.
They're also there to be there whenever it's hard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, one of the things about this job is it's hard sometimes. And so thankfully, because Joel's also a lead pastor, and so thankfully I get to call him sometimes and be like, man, this has been a really bad week. And he can be there to help, pour some life into me, and then vice versa. And so that is just the importance of doing life with people running the same direction, is that you're there to help keep each other on the same path.
So application, you guys. Today, think about who is your Aaron and her.
Yeah.
Who are the people that are around you that are trusted voices, who aren't just going to tell you what you want to hear, but who are going to tell you what you need to hear, and honestly tell you not what they think all the time, but that are people who are listening to the Lord as well.
Who are not your spouse.
Yeah.
So you should have
That's a
that
good
relationship
word.
with your spouse.
Yeah.
But it's not your spouse. That your Aaron and her is not your spouse. So you should be doing that together, but you need people of the same gender that you can lean into, and you can rely on.
Because everybody needs it, right? It's not just restricted to pastors. Everyone
needs it. No matter what. The my Aaron and hers, that not all, one is a pastor, the others are not.
Yeah.
So,
And it's important having somebody who's gone before you, somebody older who can speak into your life and that you submit to, and you're saying, hey, you've dealt with situations like this before, and what do you see from kind of not an outsider's perspective, because you have a close relationship, but just as a fatherly perspective or a motherly perspective? What do you see? Do you see anything weird in this, or do you think this is what the Lord is speaking and getting their affirmation as well?
Yeah, you should always have someone pouring into you pouring into the people around you, but also having peers that are there to just be peers that you're doing life with, and then also an opportunity for you to pour into somebody younger than you. And that's just is the way the kingdom works. It's a 3-generation. That God had Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you see it time and time again. Yeah. And so you need to have all those, and they change over time. So, like, I was actually just having this conversation with Todd Mitchell, who's my life group leader, who's been our life group leader for a long time, that when we got into their life group, Sarah was pregnant with Berkeley. So it was 14-ish years ago, 14 and a half years ago.
I was 6.
Yeah, thanks for that. Appreciate it.
You're so nice.
But I remember we had the initial excitement of like, oh, yay, we're going to have a kid. Like, it's so exciting. And then you get like a week into that, and then you're like, oh my goodness, we're going to have a kid. Like, I don't know what to do. You bring the baby. What do I do when they come home? Like, I don't know anything. And we were just like, you got overwhelmed and all that. And
Oh,
so we
yeah.
got into their life group because they were a season ahead of us. And so there was a long season that Todd was that father-ish figure to me, pouring into me of like, hey, I've already had teenagers. Let me talk to you about that, or toddlers, or this is how we dealt with these things. And then over time, that relationship has shifted. And so now there's other people that are fathering me. Pastor David has done that really well especially over this last 3 years as we've gone through the journey we have. And Todd has moved more into that peer Aaron and her relationship that's just changed over time. I've gotten a lot older than I was whenever Berkeley was born, but B, it just is the way it was going to look. And so then I've got to find that other relationship, and I've got to find opportunities for me to pour into people below me.
And if you don't have it, I know I asked you to identify those people, but if you don't have it, then ask the Lord to start highlighting people that you already know or bring them to you, because the reality is we need each other. And I love too that you even mentioned like big decisions are made not in a vacuum. They're made with the Lord, with the Holy Spirit, obviously, and in the context of trusted community too.
Yeah.
Not all big decisions, but a lot of them, right?
I'm trying to think of a big decision that wouldn't be done better in. To me, it is wise counsel is what
There you go.
want. It's all over Proverbs.
Yep.
So there is a benefit to seeking wise counsel. We know the cord of three strands principle is not going to be easily broken. So pity the man who falls down by himself. But there's pretty much every big decision you're ever going to make, you should do it in community of people. But it's still it's not your golf buddies. Maybe it's your golf buddies, but it's definitely not them. It's not just somebody that you go have fun with. It's people who are running the same direction in the same way that you are. So it's got to be people chasing after Jesus. It's got to be people with the same goals of raising their kids. It's got to be those kind of things, so that when you're seeking out their wise counsel, it is wise counsel. It's not just your buddy who you go hit golf balls with at the driving range.
Yeah.
So I use the golf analogy, and I don't even play golf. You could have done that.
I could have.
All right, I'm going to combine question 3 and 4 because it's a little bit like one could piggyback off the other. But what would you say to someone who feels stuck right now, like they're waiting on clarity from God, but it isn't coming? Another way to say that would be, how do we remain faithful and obedient in between seasons when we don't know exactly, we don't have the answers of what is my calling, what is my purpose, what am I doing in this season, and they just feel stuck?
Those are hard seasons.
Yeah.
I know, I can speak to the season we went through of the unknown. So the journey that we took to the season we're now in began actually a year before the elders even had any thoughts. It began with a conversation David and I had on a trip. We were going to Miami to see one of our church plants in Miami, and we had a conversation about, all right, I need to know that the elders have at least discussed me, and y'all haven't said no. Because if you said no, I need to go. I'm getting older. I don't want to keep doing this. If I know I'm supposed to be a lead pastor, so I want to go do this. And so he was like, I can tell you that we've talked about it, and we haven't said no, but I can't tell you anything more. And so I came home and I told Sarah, I was like, okay, we will live in the unknown for the next, I don't know how long. At that point, it could have been 5 years. That we have no idea what is next. I know that we believe I'm supposed to be a lead pastor somewhere, and our hope is that it is Beltway Park. And so we're going to sit in the unknown. And it was hard. I will not sugarcoat it. It was not easy. There's a lot of unknown in it. So what it does, the fun part of those seasons, if you can call it fun, is that you have no other choice except to lean into the Holy Spirit. It's the only thing. I wish I could give you an easier answer that you could just plug and play and you could feel better in those seasons. But you look at Job. Look at Job's season.
Yeah.
And that dude went through some dark stuff and still had to, remain faithful. And in the end, he was blessed for it. And that is the fun thing, is in the seasons of sowing, we know that the principle of sowing and reaping is undefeated. So even if we feel like all we're doing is sowing, if we had gone through that season and in the end, Beltway had decided, the elders had decided that I was not the direction we needed to go as the next lead pastor, I am 100% confident that season of sowing would still have been rewarded.
Yeah.
It would have looked different, and sometimes we can wrestle with how it looks in the end, but we would have been rewarded for faithfully sowing. And so for me, you can even look at it in a pragmatic way like that and go, all right, this is my season of sowing. But I know that sowing and reaping always happens. They are combined. You never reap without sowing, but when you sow, you will reap. So that's probably the way to remain faithful. And then to still, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, which is a weird saying, but just your community matters a lot in those seasons. Now, there were a lot of times sitting by Todd's fire pit out in his backyard of me being weary or frustrated with the Lord or whatever, that I got to talk to him and him go, all right, buddy, like, take some deep breaths.
And I'd like to speak into that too, because that was a different weight for you than it was for me, of the unknown. And I just can't, like, at the time, y'all, that song from Frozen was really still popular, Into the Unknown. And it was like, she makes it look so beautiful and easy, but the reality is it is hard to be in those seasons of in between when you don't have the answers. And but what choice are you left with than to look at the Lord and say, your will be done? Like, whatever this looks like, we choose to follow you. And at least for me, the way that the Holy Spirit encouraged my spirit was, I knew that what God was doing in you wasn't going to be wasted. Even in the preparation of whether it was preparation for what we hoped would be the end result, if it was that or not, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that God was preparing you for what the future he had for you.
Yeah.
Whether it was Beltway or somewhere else.
Yeah.
I had no doubt that none of it would have been wasted. Yeah. There were men that were investing in you. People were investing in you for one way or another. And all of that was going to be, like, we were going to see, at least in some part, like you said, fruit.
Yeah, a lot of it is like the way you remain faithful, I guess, to get practical, is to constantly evaluate your focus. It's like, what am I paying attention to? If in the season of waiting, you're always paying attention to what you don't have or what hasn't happened yet, what's going to happen is you will constantly feel defeated. And we aren't made to feel that way all the time. And so it is you have to be self-aware enough to evaluate what am I focusing on. If it's a season of waiting for marriage, if it's a season of waiting for a new career, if it's a season of just waiting to hear the Lord, or the season of infertility, like all those seasons, the big part that we have to wrestle with is just what are we focusing on? It is that not my will, but your will. And that's fun to say. It's great, except when his will is different than what we had. Yeah. So like, it's awesome when those wills align. The problem is they don't always align. Yeah. And so if we really believe it, then our focus has to be on not my will, but your will be done.
That's so good. I think about that, just even that question of, we're waiting on, it feels like we're waiting on God for the answers. Mm-hmm. And I just see this picture of yes, we're waiting on the Lord. We're waiting on the Lord to speak. We're waiting on the Lord to move. But at the same time, like, the Lord is in the waiting with us, mm-hmm. and he's teaching us and sharpening us and stretching us in those moments. And as easy as it is to say, in those moments, we should have a heart of gratitude. That's much easier said than done.
Yeah.
But that's the truth. Like, when we're in those seasons of waiting and figuring out, I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know what is up ahead, but I trust you, God, and I'm thankful that you're holding me in this season. Yeah. I'm thankful that even in this moment when I don't feel like it, I know that your plan is greater and that you're doing something. And I just love that idea of the law of sowing and reaping is undefeated. And that's just an encouragement to us that, whatever hard season you're in right now, whatever waiting season you're in, when you don't know what the future looks like, you can trust that the Lord is going to be faithful to allow you to reap what you're sowing right now.
I mean, you say about God being with you, and that I always think about in Psalm 23 when King David writes that even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil because you, the shepherd, is guiding me. We read that and we don't ever think that it doesn't say, I'll remove you from the valley of the shadow of death. So the image is this valley that you're walking through, and death is all encompassing around you. When you read it in the Hebrew, that's like the picture that it's giving you, is this weighty thing above you of just death encircling you. And so what he says is that we, even in those seasons, we won't be alone. He will guide us and he will comfort us, but he doesn't remove us from it. Yeah. And so in the season of waiting, we can, I don't know how long those seasons will ever be, but we can know that, he is still in the middle of it with us, guiding us and comforting us. So it's always been an encouraging-ish passage for me. You still are in the valley of the shadow of death. Yeah. Still, the waiting is going to happen, but we can know I'm not alone.
That's good. Well, the next question asks, how do you encourage someone who feels like they've missed their calling or made too many mistakes to walk in it?
Well, too many mistakes. Let's address that. Just read the New Testament. Any of those guys. I'm working on a sermon right now that writing about Peter. And Peter is one of Jesus' closest friends. So you have, Jesus has the crowds that follow him all the time. He's got his 12, then he has his 3. So he's got his inner circle. And Peter is one of the inner circle. So Jesus is sitting at the Last Supper with him, and he tells him somebody's going to betray him, yada, yada. And he knows that's obviously going to be Judas. And he ends up telling Peter that, Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. And Peter's like, no, I'm never going to do that. I would rather die than do that. And they get to where Jesus is captured. Peter cuts off the ear of the guy, and Jesus is like, no. And then he reattaches the ear, which is always a crazy story. and then Jesus is arrested, and then you begin to see Peter. He's sitting at a fire, which is the cool part. This is just very random, but a really neat part of this story. There are 2 times that we see the image of a charcoal fire that happen in Scripture. One is when Peter denies Jesus 3 times, and the next time is when Jesus restores Peter afterwards. It's the only 2 times in all the New Testament that image is given. And so that's cool. So,
pretty cool.
Peter's sitting by a fire, and he denies Jesus 3 times. And one of the most brutal scriptures is Luke 22:61, I think, and it's where Peter denies him a 3rd time. Jesus looks at Peter, and they see each other. And Peter, in that moment, realizes all that he has done, and he weeps bitterly, Scripture says. And so he's hit with the weight of his failure. This is Jesus' closest friends. I mean, this is his Aaron and her. Like, they are that tight, and they have lived life together intimately for a while, and he betrays Jesus. And then we know what happens with Peter, and we see the destiny that Peter has, and we know that the gospel goes forth in many ways because of Peter's leadership in the next, as the early church is being formed, and what all that looks like. And he was such a vital and integral part of carrying the gospel into the world, the gospel that we know of now. Peter plays a role in us getting to have ever experienced that. And so as far as like your mistakes, if Jesus could restore Peter after what Peter did, then there's no level of restoration that is outside of his ability. As far as miss your calling, for what? Like, what is it? How could you have missed? If you're living and breathing, you still got time to fill that calling. So it's not like I've missed it. I mean, there's no, you haven't. So you get to either you're wrong and your calling is not actually what you think your calling is, or you still have time.
Yeah.
There's no reason. There's no cap to when you've hit 35 or you hit 40, you hit 45, or now I'm 70 and I haven't done what I feel like I'm called to do, but you're still just 70 and you still have time.
That's putting a limit on something God didn't put a limit on.
Now, it may look different.
Right.
And that's not my will, but your will. It may look different, but that doesn't mean you've missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Whether you're too young or you say that you're too young or too old, a quote that I heard it from Daniel Reinhardt, one of our students pastors, but I think he says a lot is, the enemy will tell you that you're too young until the day that he tells you that you're too old.
That's good.
And just this thought of like, we can disqualify ourselves for all of these reasons and excuses.
Oh, yeah.
And then, and that's just the enemy speaking into our head until the day he flips it and he's like, oh, you missed it.
Now you're too old. Yeah.
Here,
Missed it.
this is classic because I'm in the middle of my life, I think, and I always
Did you say you were middle-aged?
Yeah, I am middle-aged. And I used to disqualify myself because I'm too young. And I think in the last little while, I've reached that point where it flipped this goes into the next question, so I'm going to get there. But I had unintentionally in my mind, I had started believing that I was no longer relevant to teenagers. Now, I have a teenager and I have a preteen who's almost a teenager, but I'm not just talking about that. Like, I have the beautiful privilege of helping out in youth, and I had bought this lie, you guys, that they needed me to be relevant and trendy, that I was not those things because of my age, and I was just detached from culture. I don't understand all the pop reference cultures that you two do. But
do you think he understands them all?
The problem is I do, and that's not great.
He does understand. Okay, so, but in that, like, I had bought that lie, and then someone comes along and speaks to that recently. This is in the last month. Someone who does not know me from anything, but does speak truth. She came and she spoke something to me, and she said, I bless you to stop believing the lie that youth and teenagers need you to be trendy and relevant like that. No, you carry the word and proclaim God's word with truth and power and love those kids. That's what they need. They need vulnerability. They need you to be real, And it released something in me. It broke something off of me that I needed to be broken. And so I say all that to say that it happened in my life. And if it's happened in my life, I wonder how many others out there are experiencing either the lie that I'm too young or I'm too old.
Yeah.
The reality is the enemy just wants you to believe you can't.
Yeah.
That's it. He just wants to bring despair and discouragement to you, and that's not okay.
And when I was a kid, can't was not allowed. That was a word that was not you're not allowed to use.
Oh,
Really?
wow.
Can't.
Wow.
You always can. There's always
I
a way.
can't believe that.
Can't. Okay, so that leads me into this next question, because it is our last question that we're going to have time for today. But, sometimes words are released and a word is given or encouragement is given, and we tend to think that means that it's going to happen like now. But a lot of times those words that are released or that encouragement that's given or whatever we feel like we've heard the Lord say, a lot of times those things take time to grow, right? And so the question here is, how have you seen God use small things, maybe a seed or a step of obedience, to ultimately reveal a bigger picture of his plan, right? Over time.
Yeah.
Small things that have revealed a picture of his plan. I think of like the waiting piece. You look at like the Israelites, right? They come out of Egypt and then they know the promised land is coming up and they wait 40 years
Right.
and they just wander around and they eat the same food. And they had to be frustrated and discouraged, and they get to it. And then here's the crazy part. They get to their promise and two things happen. One, they look at it and it feels overwhelming. They can't take the step needed to take it. Two, they then get into it and still make decisions that aren't God's decisions for them. So even walking in the calling and the promise that God has for you, you still have to stay connected to him and what he's doing constantly, because it's not like you get to the season of promise or you get to the season where you're walking in your calling and then it's like, oh, great, I'm here. It's you still have to keep pushing forward in that. And so like when I think about my own life, there's a ton of words over the years that people have said over me that there's some, like there's one specific one I can think of right now that a guy came to Beltway. He was big in the prophetic movement, and he spoke a word on me. I have a recording of it on my computer, and to this day it has not happened. And there have been times, here's the hard part with promise and calling, there have been times I've been tempted to make it happen. Ooh. And probably could. I mean, it is something that I could make happen and have not felt the Lord ever say it was time to yet. And so I haven't done it yet. And I believe it's still going to happen. But it was a very specific word that we will see what it looks like. Wow. And so you still have those times that even walking in the calling, the promises are still going to be there, and they're not always going to be at the same time. And so you have to be patient in the waiting, but you also have to take small victories. So over the years, as I was doing all the different things at Beltway, this in the back of my mind, when I got hired, I never wanted to be the lead pastor. Never in a million years was that a thought. And then I'd have somebody say it, and I would kind of like brush them off, whatever. Like, hey, you ever thought about doing this? Like, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And then over the years, it was enough people that finally you're like, all right, God, what's it going to take for me to at least entertain this? And so then you begin to we begin to entertain it at that point and go, all right, is this going to be the thing that we're supposed to do? So then once again, beating the drum, we went to our community. Yeah. And so you grab hold of it in those seasons and you set it in front of your community. Like, all right, this is what I feel like God may be doing. I don't know. So can y'all just pray? I'm not asking you to tell me. I don't need you to hear God for me. I need you to hear God in this situation, and let's talk about it. And still had to hear the Lord for it, and still had to press forward. And we just grabbed hold of the little things along the way that felt like God was showing himself faithful. And so it was an open door here. And then you're like, okay, well, maybe this is that. And then another step over here. And then, it was David sitting down with me in the coffee shop and going, hey, I think you need to go back to school. And all these little things that were like confirmations of a promise that we felt like we were beginning to see it take shape. And even still, it wasn't until 3 years ago that we began to see really what it was going to look like. And it wasn't until September of 23 that we knew confidently this is what it was going to look like. Yeah. So a lot of it is just, I think we don't do a great job as people celebrating small victories and small wins. Even in small times, we hear God say something that then he does it. And if we're going to believe him in faith for the big things, we better get real good at seeing him move in the small things. And so we all want the promise at the end. We want the Israelites as they stepped into the promised land. They had 40 years of seeing God be faithful every day, providing food for them every day. And they did not die. They wandered for 40 years in the wilderness and were provided for all the time. And that's small victories along the way that if we can get good in our lives of seeing God do those little promises, those little victories along the way, those things give us faith for the waiting for the big promise or the big calling that we feel like is waiting for us at the end. So
It's good.
It's good. I think about when I was in high school and I was a sophomore and I was attending a different church in Abilene, and I had just come out of a season where my parents got divorced when I was in junior high. And so I just came out of a season of even just wrestling with my faith and, having a faith that was my own and not my parents'. And so I was attending a church, and Beltway hosted a Word Spirit Power Conference at the beginning of 2020, which was a crazy year.
to say the least.
And I just I had some friends invite me to come, and so it was my first time ever at Beltway, and got experienced some stuff that I've never even knew about that existed, and people speaking in the prophetic and people praying for healing and contending for healing and even just worshiping in a way that I've never seen before. And it was very interesting to me. And I, as a sophomore in high school, didn't understand hardly any of it, didn't really have any spiritual depth. But I just had this tug from the Lord of, hey, I think this is something that you're calling me to just entertain. And this is something that you want me to seek out and to see, hey, is this my new church home? And so it was just a week-to-week thing that I was walking with the Lord. I was like, okay, well, this week I'm going to go to the Wednesday night youth service, and I'm just going to see what it's about. And then I felt like the Lord spoke something to me there. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to see about getting in a life group, and I'm going to, see about starting to come on Sunday mornings, and, what does that look like? And fast forward 5 years later, and like this church is not just my home church, but this is my family. This is where I work. This is where my family goes and attends. And just the small thing of a high schooler deciding what youth group to be a part of.
Yeah.
Then turns into currently my job occupation.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thankful for the way that the Lord works in such the small details. And in those moments, like, we're not even realizing that the little decisions that the Lord is guiding us in are turning into huge decisions and huge implications in our lives.
Yeah, that's good. Well, y'all got anything else you'll want to share in regards to purpose and calling and all that?
Yeah. So anytime that I talk to people about serving, they're like, well, I don't know where to serve. I always give the most theological answer you can ever give somebody. I'm like, just try stuff. So like, if you want to know your purpose and calling, you feel like you're banging your head against the wall and you don't know, just start trying some stuff.
Yeah.
Start serving some areas, start reading some books, just start trying stuff. Because of that thing that we started off the whole podcast in, is this design that God made us uniquely, that you'll find something that all of a sudden it sparks a passion inside of you. You're like, wait, maybe that is something I'm supposed to be a part of. Maybe that is something that I could be good at. Maybe that is something that the Lord's asking me to do. And so just start trying stuff. If you're wrestling with it, if you're not sure, if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, even from a serve standpoint at church, maybe it is a career, maybe it's something else, just start trying some things and let God, stay in step with him, stay with your community, but start trying some things and then see what God begins to spark a passion inside of you, because you were uniquely designed by him on purpose, and that those things will be revealed at some point.
It's good.
That's awesome.
All right.
I'm super thankful that you joined us. I'm sure if you said no, you'd hear about it from your wife. But
Yeah, I would.
I enjoyed my first Turner sandwich. I gotta say.
I hope I never hear that again.
Yeah, thank you guys both so much for joining us today. And thank you guys for joining us on the other side. And we always love you guys when you listen and watch the podcast. We hope you were encouraged today. These were your questions. So thank you so much for sending them in. We hope you guys have a fantastic week. Be blessed, and we will see you back next time. Bye, guys.